Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royse. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. The martial art of Jiu Jitsu has hundreds of years of history. It's still thriving. I'm proud to have Calder Powers here, who is Executive Director of Guardian Projects. Let's welcome Calder and let him share with us his experiences and insights of Jiu Jitsu. Hello,
Daph-
Calder.
Hey, Daphne, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to our discussion.
Please tell us about you and Guardian Project.
So, Guardian Project's a 501(c)(3), basically with a mission to help kids get into jiu-jitsu. We provide jiu-jitsu scholarships. We have 13 locations worldwide with 348 students currently on scholarship. These are kids that are underprivileged kids that otherwise wouldn't be training. And so there's so many benefits to jiu-jitsu in terms of the exercise, the community, the discipline, the confidence building. And what we kind of recognized, what this was something that was really reserved for kids that could afford it. And so because it's something that's not implemented in schools, it's all through businesses and academies. The Guardian Project's goal was really to bridge that gap and to provide jiu-jitsu scholarships in these areas of need for kids so that more kids would be able to participate and get the same benefits as their more wealthy peers.
When we first met, you told me how you were failing and struggling in high school until you found Jiu-Jitsu and then managed to finish UC Berkeley with a 4.0 GPA. Please share your experience and how Jiu-Jitsu changed your life.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of kids, my story is not unique in the sense of that a lot of kids are struggling in their high school years and feeling depressed and feeling self-confidence issues. I think that, for me, I was rejected from sports teams. So I tried out and I was not able to make it, which I think is a huge problem just in our sports teams, not really being what's best for the kids, but being what's best for the coaches to be competitive and to have the teams win. And I think that that leaves a lot of kids feeling left out. So I definitely felt like that. And I was resorting to sort of self-medicating with drugs and alcohol at that time because it's something that a lot of kids get kind of into at that age. So I was really going down a negative sort of spiral without really realizing how bad it was going to impact my future. And I sort of dreaded the future. I had a lot of insecurities with my self-confidence. And I also remember just being really insecure whenever confrontation came around. So if there was a school fight that even happened, down the block, I got really nervous and I hated that feeling. So I had driven by this Krav Maga place a lot when I was younger and basically just wanted to do something that maybe would make me feel a little bit more secure. And I was lucky enough that even though my mom was in debt, she was able to, afford a membership for me doing that. They had a grappling class there. And as soon as I started doing jujitsu, it was so much fun. And I think that there's all these benefits we talk about. We talk about the community, the confidence, all these different things that are sort of the byproducts that are really easy to sort of describe. But for me, it was just a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun to wrestle and, just a very strange place where people were coming together that were strangers that were trying to choke each other. And, just it was very kind of taboo in a way, but it was also just so much fun that I got hooked on it. And even though I wasn't very good when I started, I recognized that every day I was getting just a tiny bit better. And I think that there's all these different things that it had for me where when I recognized that I was able to maybe grow a little bit, I didn't really have other journeys in my life that I felt like that with. So um, I think through training, it just kind of starts having you wanting to eat cleaner, you want to perform better, and then you're looking to compete. And really what competition is I think it's the highest form of self-development because you're trying to out develop the other person that you're competing against. So it was just a really you know fantastic thing for me to get into. And through that, it kind of forced me to get away from some of the unhealthy things I was doing, such as smoking weed, drinking all the time. And it replaced my peer group with a positive one of adults for the first time that I felt like I was seeing that sort of mentorship angle rather than adults that were upset with me for doing something. So when I finished up with high school, barely graduating, I think I had like a 2.05 and I was cheating my whole way through high school. So it was totally not even a real GPA. Then I went to community college and I trained. So I was able to go to a new place and just do jujitsu there. And it was just jujitsu in school. And I got a 4.0, which was really surprising. My first time getting all A's on my report card, and just I think it's a really great shift for kids to get into. So it's what it did for me, and it's what it's doing for a lot of the kids that are in our programs.
Was that your idea or your mom's idea to join Jiu Jitsu?
It was definitely my idea just because I felt so weak. I felt so insecure and I hated that feeling. I hated the feeling of not being able to hold my own in any sort of confrontation. I hated the feeling of that nervousness and anxiety if anything were to happen. And so I think that joining was just an attempt for me to not feel as much like that. And I mean, to be honest, my thoughts on self-defense, I mean, obviously, if there's any sort of weapon involved, all martial arts sort of go out the window to a certain extent. But I think that it does give you something of just feeling more secure with who you are. And so it did that for me.
Can you tell us about the impact that Jiu Jitsu has for young people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it really gets kids in the door just because of how fun it is. And there's a lot of other programs that might be great for kids, maybe math programs or different, after school activities. But for jujitsu, it's so much fun. And I think that when you get the kids and actually having them spar, it's something that's very natural for us to want to kind of explore fighting each other in a really safe context where jujitsu doesn't have the striking component. So for head injuries, it's not nearly as scary for any sort of parents. And so I think that it's the fun that kind of gets them to be coming back, and all these byproducts come after that. It's like it's most important what it is to get them coming back, right? So the fun is why they're showing up the next day and showing up the next week, and then they're getting better, and then they're eating healthier. And I think the mentorship's a really interesting component because they're just around these people for our teens. They're around the adult members of these academies, and there's just a level of things that rub off in terms of career goals, in terms of, just guidance and things like that. So I would say that it's appealing for the kids in terms of the fun. Kids love to, I think fighting is an interesting thing because it's like kind of the apex of competition, even in sports games, basketball or other things. When things are going and kind of getting elevated, it's typically fighting that sort of comes out of that. So to put fighting into like the first category, I think it has a natural draw and a natural lot of fun. And it's all these byproducts that just come from the routine of consistency of exercise. And I think kids end up learning that it's actually important to hold your emotions down because when you get emotional, you tend to make mistakes. And so there's all these life lessons that go along with the training that just sort of come naturally.
I just want to ask you about fighting that you mentioned earlier.
Mm.
Would that give kids something in control?
Yeah, I think as a kid, there's a lot of feelings that you don't really have control in your life. You're kind of forced to go to school and there's a lot of things. I mean, for most part, you have very little control of things. And so I think in an area, it's interesting because in the area of say grappling and jujitsu, as a kid gets better, they start really leveling up and quickly becoming better than a lot of their peers. And a teen that's training for 2 years is going to do much better than an adult that's training for a few months. And so I think it's an interesting environment where kids or teens can kind of have seniority and feel in a context where they actually are the ones who maybe could help an adult more than an adult could help them in some circumstances. And that's a really empowering feeling.
There are many different type of martial arts. What is the difference between Jiu-Jitsu and the others?
So I would say comparing jujitsu to another martial art could be like comparing water polo and badminton. They're so different, and I think even it might even be further. So jujitsu is all a grappling based martial art. It's basically the techniques to take an opponent down to the ground to get a dominant control on them, to pass their legs, get that dominant control, and then end the fight in some sort of submission where it's a joint lock or a choke. And through that, it's actually really safe because uh, people tap when they basically, have the other person, and so they're not really risking the same sort of injuries that happen with a striking, where it's very you want to hit hard, you want to, get a knockout or things like that, and the chokes are very safe as well. So, the tap is very important when you tap out that whoever is the opponent stops. Um, but I would say that it's different than other martial arts where a lot of other martial arts like karate or I don't really have a great understanding of everything else, but There's a lot of striking in Muay Thai or various types of karate and things like that. Jiu-jitsu has no striking. So it's all just grappling, controlling, and judo and wrestling are kind of parts of jiu-jitsu in the sense of that you can use all of those moves in a jiu-jitsu context in a jiu-jitsu match. But judo is sort of the art of throwing people, wrestling, the art of taking them down kind of more directly. So that's kind of in short, jiu-jitsu is all grappling.
Is it always a one-on-one? Uh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. And I think that that's interesting because having a one-on-one sport is it provides being responsible for the entire outcome. So when you have a match, everything that you do is, sort of by yourself in that moment, but you also have a team of support behind you, meaning you have a team of coaching, you have a team of people that you're kind of working your moves out with, that are giving you advice, that are kind of you're going against to make you better. So I think you have that teamwork aspect of it in sort of on the training side of it. But when it comes to competition, it's one on one. And I think the benefit to that is that when you win, you are entirely earning that victory. Whereas in a basketball game, I mean, I watched the Super Bowl yesterday, and it's like once the offense does their thing, now it's basically up to the defense. And the difference between them getting a Super Bowl ring is completely outside of their control. So I think that especially for kids being in an environment where they're entirely earning their wins and entirely facing their losses is really unique because it doesn't allow you to blame anyone else.
I checked your website earlier. I see a lot of coaches, they are male.
Yes.
Is more females getting involved in jiu-jitsu now?
Absolutely. There's a huge, I mean, the thing about jujitsu is for women, um, women's divisions are growing rapidly. And I think there's definitely, it started out a lot more male dominant, but academies across the whole world are becoming much more inclusive to women. And yeah, I'd say that we've sort of naturally grown our program, and it kind of happens that we have predominantly male instructors for Guardian right now. But there's many more women getting into the sport, and it's definitely an inclusive sport for women.
It's wonderful news to know. And how often must someone practice jiu-jitsu to master the skills? What are the benefits of jiu-jitsu?
So to jiu-jitsu is really hard. And I would say that it's one of those things that I would say if you're not training at least 3 times a week, you're probably not really improving. So I would say to take jujitsu seriously at 4 to 5, times a week is more normal. And if you're training once or twice a week, you're kind of staying in the game a little bit, but you're probably not getting a lot better. And it's extremely, I think that's one of the hard things. A lot of people quit at blue belt. It's like over 90% of people don't even make it to the first colored belt because it's so challenging and you have to face that hardship head on because you come back into the academy maybe after a long time off, or if you're not training, and the people that are training are going to be dominating you in a very physical manner. So it kind of forces people to jump in or out. And I think that that's why we see such a low percentage of people getting their black belt and really leveling up.
How long it would take someone to get the black belt? How many years of practice?
So on average, it's around 8 to 12 years, just kind of averaging, but different situations happen. There's some prodigy people that get it much sooner. And then there's, a lot of people that maybe take 15 to even 20 years to get a black belt. So it's an interesting sport because in a lot of other martial arts, black belts are given to kids. And it's not as taken as seriously, but in the jiu-jitsu world, it's extremely serious. And when someone tries to cheat the system, they get called out pretty quick and it kind of upsets everyone because it's something that while it's not an institution like a university, there is an institutional level of sort of respect for the belts and people do take it really seriously.
Can you tell us how many different levels does jiu-jitsu has?
So there's white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, and black belt. So there's 5 different belts. And each one of those belts you're going to stay at for longer than a year. Oftentimes people stay at blue belt for 2 to 4 years. Purple kind of same thing. So yeah, it takes a lot of time and it really comes down to mat time, right? If you're training, 6+ days a week and you're doing, extra drilling on the side, you'll level up a lot sooner. But I think it's a good thing too because it's one of those things that really has a long journey ahead where it's not like people can come in and just kind of feel like they're already, at the top. And the thing is for black belts too, I mean, right on the edge of a black belt. And, black belts are still learning just as much as everyone else. I don't think to master jujitsu, I don't know if it's even possible because there's so many different variables and so many different things that can happen. So yeah, it's definitely a long road.
What do you have to do to move up to the next level?
So it's a little subjective. There's kind of a general feel of what, I can almost roll with anyone and know sort of around what belt color they have. And it's just sort of a baseline level of proficiency that's hard to put a finger on. There's not a test like other martial arts where you have to know these things. Some schools do that a little bit, but for the most part, it's just kind of a general level of proficiency, being that, a blue belt is going to be kind of knowing some of the basics and where they should be. They'll know a few different submissions and things like that, and they'll kind of have a better understanding of what they want to do. And then purple is going to be a little bit more technical, really good at certain things, and so on. But it's kind of a more subjective, answer, to be honest.
Is it jiu-jitsu a sport for everyone?
I think it is. I think what's really interesting about jiu-jitsu is that because you are competing about, especially for competition, you're going against your weight, age, and gender and rank, that you're really getting an opponent that's going to be close in line with your skill level and your size and your power and everything else like that. So especially for competition, it's made to be very inclusive. And I think that all gyms, it's funny because like people might think that there's more of a meathead or aggressive vibe. And I think that it's actually the opposite, where people are going through their emotions in such a healthy way that it's going to be very inviting. People are going to want you to be around there. They're going to want you, they're often going to go and make it really welcoming to you because they know what it's done for them. So they want to help other people on that same path. So I'd say it's something that everyone should try out. And I think that, it's very hard to kind of put into words what we're trying to give these kids with Guardian. Um, just in the sense of all around trying to change their life and get them on a completely positive life path. But it's going to be easier to understand how it works once you try it, because if you just look at it, it kind of looks weird. But when you're actually doing it, you're going to feel that level of the endorphins and the sort of drive to go against somebody. It's just a lot of fun. And I think that that is sort of the baseline of, like I said, it being really engaging and fun to do. And then all these positive things coming with it. And yeah, I'd say that, I've had some injuries and taken time off. And it's funny because when I take time off, I feel the lack of all the things that it gives me. I feel the lack of the community. I feel the lack of the endorphins. I feel the lack of just a general fulfillment in my life. So um, it's something that is become sort of a spiritual necessity for me. And going through COVID, I think was a really hard time for a lot of jujitsu people because it kind of forced everyone out. So I think it's something that there's really an interesting dynamic happening where you have a lot of the most powerful people, celebrities that are training. You see Usher training, you see Ashton Kutcher's, Mark Zuckerberg, Tom Hardy, these people that are adults that are really successful that could really do anything if they wanted to. If they wanted to do helicopter wakeboarding, they could be doing that if they wanted to, but they're choosing to do jujitsu. And I think that there's a reason that is really interesting to look into why they're spending their time investing in um, so something that's so hard and something that you have to be a beginner at. And I think it's because you can't purchase that belt. Of course, you can buy any belt online, but it doesn't really mean anything until you earn it. And I think that these people are interested in challenging themselves and they see that self-development aspect that's coming with it. So I think that's something to pay attention to there is why are all these people that are in the sort of apex of our society, the richest celebrities and the CEOs choosing to participate in this that is a martial art that you don't see it with karate, you don't see it with I don't think anything else.
Can you practice alone without a partner?
No. No, I don't think you can. I think that you can watch videos and sort of understand some concepts of sort of kind of doing homework. But I think that you really do need to have a partner. And it's funny because during the pandemic, a lot of people started stuffing their clothes, stuffing their gis and making these dummies where they were practicing moves on an inanimate object of a gi that they stuffed. And I don't think it gets you any better because you're not feeling the responsiveness of what someone is resisting feels like at all. So I think that there's even an argument that practicing alone could make you worse because you're not getting any feedback. So I think that yeah, it's something that you need a person, and that really creates a bond with people because it's like to do this thing that I love. I am grateful for you to be here to do it with me. And I think that that really there's a lot of different dynamics of fighting and kind of having people sort of be there for you that a team has with jujitsu. And it's why these friendships and bonds within these academies are so strong.
You have practiced Jiu-Jitsu since you were a teenager, and now you are executive director at Guardian. What made you want to pursue in Jiu-Jitsu as a career?
I think that for me, I just know how I felt when I was a kid. I know that that this was something that was so impactful for me to participate in that I was not even into UC Berkeley yet, and I was already volunteering with Guardian, just because I was working as a bartender and I saw that I wanted to kind of do something outside of it, more volunteer side. And so yeah, I began volunteering probably when I was like 22 or 23 with Guardian. And as the organization grew, I took on more roles, and so I think it's something that I kind of fell into naturally. But I think it comes from a passion to help the kids that were in the position that I was in, and because I know that this is something that is unique right now. Like jujitsu scholarship for kids, or there's not too many of them. So I think that we have an opportunity to really make a difference and help a ton of kids, and that's what we're doing.
I understand you have so many different locations throughout the country and also Peru and Mongolia. Would you mention something about this?
Yeah, so the expansion's been really interesting. I think, with our first academy when we started well, when I came onto Guardian as a volunteer, but when my friend Ben and Joel started Guardian, it was a one academy in Oakland. And so with the one academy, it's much harder to expand because they were kind of running everything to a certain extent. I mean, we had coaches, but the expansion now, there's so many academies with such great, amazing instructors all over. And so our scholarship program works by partnering with these academies. So we can bring on a scholarship program. We can get a subset of kids that are underprivileged into these academies and do it through the Guardian 501(c)(3). And then with the international projects, these are in areas that really have a tremendous amount of underprivileged kids, where we can kind of invest and fund these programs. And yeah, my good friend Dave Clayhan founded the Ralph Gracie Mongolia, which we've partnered and kind of helped them with the 501(c)(3) with Guardian. We've founded Peru with a good friend Salva. So these are all natural connections that we've sort of been lucky enough to be partnering with people that are interested in making such a change. But these areas, especially internationally, have kids. A lot of the kids in Peru are not even enrolled in a primary school. So there's a dramatic need, and to be able to get those kids off the street into doing something like jujitsu for an hour a day, and get kind of mentors and people to lead them in the right direction. I strongly believe it's the difference between the paths in life that they take, and especially in an area where there's so much involvement with drugs and gangs for teenagers. We really think that programs like these are there to combat that and get the kids to understand that they have a lot more potential than they might think. And I think what's really interesting about the international schools is, most of these kids want to become instructors. They see that jujitsu is really helping them and they have that same passion. So in a sense, these are sort of becoming trade schools, where it's not just that we're teaching them self-defense, but we're actually teaching them to become instructors themselves. And this is a career path that's going to be not being able to taken by AI. This is a career path that's going to be able to compensate them to follow a dream of becoming an instructor and spreading jujitsu even further. And I think that it's really interesting when you think of the amount of time that can pass on the web that can be created of these kids going to new locations, probably helping some kids along the way as they become instructors, and sort of perpetuating the cycle of generosity and jujitsu, and it gets really exciting from that angle as well.
How do you introduce Jiu-Jitsu to them? This is something probably they never heard of it. How do you engage them in the first place?
So the outreach is a really interesting component. What's interesting about these areas like the Mongolia or the Peru projects, we have two in Peru, is the kids don't really have much opportunity. So as soon as they hear about some sort of opportunity, they're very eager to take it. Our program immediately, the wait list shot up as word kind of gets around. Our instructors there are actually very in touch with the area families that just, all over. And I mean, there's different stories for different kids. This could be the instructor maybe going to buy something from the store and seeing a kid and introducing him and saying, hey, if you want to do jujitsu, there's this program over here, or it's told by the families. And I think that he's made it really, I think the families are very involved as well. They understand and they see the kids progress and grow. We have countless different stories of the kids overcoming certain hurdles, and the families see that up close too. So we've had a lot of support from them as well. And um, yeah, I think, for the US academies, it can be a little bit harder to do the outreach because, the kids already have some sports programs that are sort of in the schools, and jujitsu might seem a little bit weirder to, some of the kids in cities. But the same sort of word of mouth things, and basically just our goal is to make sure that kids are able to have the chance to participate.
Wonderful. Can you tell us a success story of your peers or students?
There's so many. So you're talking about like stories of transformation.
Any story that can inspire people.
Yeah, I would recommend. So I have a short video that I filmed that's on Guardian Gym. So it would be Guardian Jiu Jitsu para Todos, and that's on our YouTube. But you'll see a story there that has a kid Anderson, and I think he's one of the more impactful stories that we have because he's deaf, but he also has motor coordination issues. And so he was introduced to the program through a friend as he was getting really bullied so bad that he didn't want to leave his house because he has these issues. He was an easy target for kids in the street. And when he was going to school or when he was walking the neighborhood, he would just often get beat up. And so for a kid that has motor coordination issues, that actually led him to be inside and have it get worse because he wasn't able to exercise and move his body. And so he was introduced to the program, and most kids that are in this kind of situation, instructors are going to have a really hard time working with them because they're going to take a lot of extra attention. And I think it's one of the reasons, of many that Salvatore is such a wonderful person because he took this kid in and worked with him on the side and has gotten him much better. And there was a point where he got bullied again and didn't want to go. And so just to tell it quickly, he told the mom to bring Anderson back in and sat all the kids down and was like, hey, you need to protect this kid. He's, your brother. And from then on, the kids, he had this like, wave of protection from all these kids that do jujitsu from the schools to everyone knew to like, hey, don't mess with that kid. And so he hasn't been getting bullied. And it's been a tremendous thing for him because he's learned to move his body so well that now he's able to run. He's playing soccer. And it's just, there's so many different stories that happen from all these different hardships. There's countless hardships that these kids are going to have to go through, whether it's bullying, whether it's weight loss, whether it's some sort of mental health thing, or there's so many things. And so we hear success stories, constantly throughout our programs. And even years down the road, we'll have kids or parents reaching out being like, hey, this was something that really helped. And it's interesting because you never know what kind of stories are going to come. But that was a really touching one. There's so many more to count, but yeah, that's just one that comes to mind.
Great story. What is your philosophy in life?
So I think my philosophy in life, and I would just kind of relate this to jujitsu. I think jujitsu really taught me that things are not as fixed as I thought they were, and that when I was 18 years old, I really felt like a loser. I felt like I was a loser then, and I was going to be a loser later, and I was going to fail. I was failing school. I was failing at all these things that I wanted to do. I was failing in climbing the social ladder the way I wanted to. And I think what jujitsu really showed me through practicing it was that these limiting beliefs could be broken. And it was an interesting thing for me because I never thought that I was going to be able to um, do well in this sort of fighting context, especially against these bigger and larger people. There was a guy that was really intimidating that I was training with that looked like Bane from Batman. And he stopped coming in as much. And maybe a few months later, I started beating him. And it was like something really clicked in my brain where I felt like these things that we think about ourselves, that we hold ourselves back from, are not as permanent as we think, and they're actually much more. They're not as fixed, and so I think that that's what I would want other kids to kind of understand because when you're in those moments and you really feel like that about yourself, and you really, are stuck to that identity, it can be really hard for you to think that it's possible to be the person that you want to become or kind of do these things. And I think jujitsu is an incredibly transformative thing because it allows you to actually shift in all these ways. You start feeling stronger, you start looking better, you start feeling more capable, and then you start realizing like maybe I'm not bad at math, maybe I'm not as antisocial as I thought I was, or these other things are actually also malleable as well. So That's what it did for me. And I think that when you kind of start understanding that, you kind of break down those barriers and it allows you to do a lot more with whatever you want to in life because you don't feel like you're stuck there. If you feel like you're stuck there, then it's like, what's the point of trying?
Wow. Anyway, I'd like to know if the jiu-jitsu is a cardio sports.
Yeah, I would say jujitsu's it is more of a cardio sport, but you definitely can get stronger. It's not the same as weightlifting. I think that they go really well together. And what's interesting with jujitsu is if you start training jujitsu, you're going to start looking to do other things that are going to help your jujitsu. So you're going to start looking to be more flexible. You're going to start maybe looking to lift weights. It's definitely cardio. There's a certain sort of jujitsu shape that is something that you get into over time of practicing it. Um, and it's kind of hard to describe, but you'll feel when you're out of shape and you'll feel when you're in shape. And I think that one of the benefits is because you're going against people in such a real context that it really forces you to be like, well, I definitely want to eat cleaner because I'm going to have to pay the consequence if I don't. I'm going to have to, especially if you're competing, like you don't want to be competing and then making all these bad decisions before your match that are going to lead to the outcome where you're not going to feel that you can perform as well. So that's where I kind of talk about the self-development aspect because if you're lifting weights, you can kind of get away with whatever you want to. It's not like you're going to have to really pay the price in a way. If you're doing other, you're going on runs, you're not going to have to feel that did you do the right things or not the way that jujitsu is going to force you to.
Can you tell us where to find your website and so how people can contact you?
Yes, absolutely. So the website is guardiangym.org. That's going to have a list of our academies. If you're interested in supporting any of those academies, you can click on their links on the top. If you want to support us, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so those donations are tax deductible. You can find us on Instagram at Guardian Gym. And if you want to contact me, you can send a DM there. I check that pretty regularly. And yeah, I mean, I think that, for the people who don't know what jujitsu is, I would highly recommend that they try out a class because it's something that there's a reason that Mario Lopez is 50 years old and he's competing in jujitsu. There's a reason that, these people who really could do anything are choosing to do this. And it's because it's a sport that is applicable to an older generation. And so I don't think that, I think that a lot of times people might feel like, oh, I'm, in my 30s, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s, like I'm done with sports. But this is something that you can participate in. I think it's really sad that we kind of reserve sports for kids because I think sports and just kind of these sort of competitive aspects to it can be really beneficial for everyone. And there's no reason that, when you're done with high school, that you should throw away any hopes of being athletic in this sort of competitive context.
Great to know. Thank you very much, Calder. I
Thank you so
really
much,
appreciate
Daphne.
your time here.
I had so much fun.
Thank
Take care.
you. You too.